This might be the most beautiful animal in the entire ocean. Floating on its back in a sunlit forest of kelp, holding its baby on its chest, holding hands with its neighbors so that nobody drifts away in the night. It looks like the softest, easiest life in the whole sea. It is, in truth, one of the most desperate, a relentless, round-the-clock fight against the cold that never once stops, not for a single hour of its life. And no, that cuteness is not a luxury. Every adorable thing this animal does, holding hands, hugging its pup, grooming itself for hours on end, is a survival tactic, keeping it alive in water cold enough to kill a person in about an hour. This is the sea otter, and it is quietly one of the hardest working animals alive. Start with the cold, because the cold explains everything else. Every other mammal out in that freezing water, the seals, the sea lions, the whales, survives by wearing a thick layer of blubber, of fat, like a wetsuit built into their bodies. The sea otter has almost none. It faces the very same killing cold with no fat to protect it at all. Instead, it survives on one thing, and one thing only, its fur. And not just any fur, the densest fur of any animal on Earth. Up to 1 million hairs packed into a single square inch of skin, trapping a warm layer of air against its body. A human being has maybe 100,000 hairs on their whole head. A sea otter has more than that on a patch the size of a postage stamp. And that is exactly why it grooms constantly, because that coat is the only thing standing between it and freezing to death. If the fur ever gets matted, or filthy, or slicked with oil, it stops holding air, and the otter's body heat pours straight out into the sea. So it spends hours of every single day cleaning it, fluffing it, and literally blowing air back down into it. What looks like a happy animal grooming in the sunshine is really an animal desperately maintaining the one piece of equipment keeping it alive. But living on fur instead of fat comes at a savage price. To hold a warm body in cold water with no insulation of its own, the otter has to burn energy at a furious rate, which means it has to eat and eat and eat. A sea otter has to eat around 1/4 of its entire body weight every single day just to stay warm. Picture sitting down and eating 1/4 of yourself daily, where you freeze. Its whole life is spent either hunting for food, eating that food, or cleaning the fur that all of that food is paying to heat. And it hunts in a way that almost nothing else in the ocean can, because sea otters use tools. An otter will choose a favorite rock from the sea floor and actually keep it tucked into a loose pouch of skin under its arm, like a pocket, and use it over and over, hammering open the tough shells of clams and mussels and sea urchins against a stone balanced on its own chest. It is one of the very few animals on the whole planet that uses a tool, keeps that tool, and carries it around, a little furry engineer floating on its back, cracking dinner open on its belly. For a moment, just watch one of them float, turning slowly in the golden light coming down through the kelp. Perfectly, impossibly at ease. Now meet the hardest job in that cold sea, being a mother. A sea otter mother gives birth to a single pup, and that pup is born almost completely helpless. Its baby fur is so fluffy, so full of trapped air, that it physically cannot dive. It bobs on the surface like a cork, unable to sink even if it wanted to. So while the mother dives down for food, she wraps her baby in a strand of kelp, anchoring it in place like a tiny boat tied to a dock, so it can't drift away on the current while she's gone. She carries it everywhere on her chest. She grooms it almost without stopping, keeping its coat waterproof, because the moment a pup's fur fails, the pup begins to freeze. And she pours so much into it, so much milk, so much food, so much of her own body's energy, that many mothers push themselves right to the edge of starvation to raise just one pup. Some give absolutely everything they have and do not survive it. Out here, love is measured in calories, and a sea otter mother spends every single one she has. If an animal this beautiful and this tough is the kind of story you want more of, do me a quick favor and subscribe. There is a new wild survival story here every single week. Because there is one last thing about the sea otter, and it turns this tiny animal into a giant. For all of its softness, the sea otter is one of the single most important animals in the entire ocean. Those sea urchins it loves to crack open, left unchecked, urchins mow down whole kelp forests, chewing through them until the forest collapses into a bare, lifeless wasteland of rock. The otters hold the urchins in check, so wherever sea otters thrive, the kelp forests thrive right alongside them, vast swaying underwater forests that shelter thousands of other species and pull carbon straight out of the sky. Take the otters away, and the forest dies. This one small hand-holding animal is quietly holding an entire ecosystem together, which makes what nearly happened to them especially cruel. That extraordinary fur, the very thing that keeps the otter alive, is also the most valuable fur in the world. And so they were hunted, relentlessly, until a population that once numbered in the hundreds of thousands had crashed to perhaps a couple of thousand animals, clinging on in a few hidden corners of the coast. The thing that makes the sea otter beautiful is the same thing that very nearly erased it from the earth. They are slowly, carefully coming back now, but it was closer than anyone likes to remember. A mother and her pup, drifting together on the swell, wrapped in a ribbon of kelp, the two of them the whole world to each other. So look at it one more time, floating on its back in the sunlit kelp, holding its baby, holding hands, grooming in the light. It is not a picture of an easy life. It is a picture of the hardest working, most devoted, most necessary animal in the sea. One that has to fight the cold every hour it's awake, that spends everything it has on a single pup, that quietly keeps a whole forest alive, and that just happens, on top of all of it, to be the most beautiful thing out there. So if this little animal warmed you up even a little, subscribe. There is a new wild survival story here every week. And tell me honestly down in the comments, we tend to think the toughest survivors are the sharks, the monsters, the killers, but the sea otter never stops fighting the cold, never stops feeding its pup, never stops holding on, and it does the whole thing looking like the happiest creature in the sea. So which is the real strength, the one that looks terrifying, or the one that looks tender and simply never ever gives up? Because out in the cold kelp tonight, one of them is still floating there, holding its baby up above the water, refusing to let go.